The time is the late Middle Ages. The 13th century is drawing to a close. Europe is laid out like a chessboard on which kings, popes, and dukes move armies, gold, and souls. Swords still rule, but the shadow of the pen of law and literacy is beginning to overshadow the blade. To the north, England is at war with itself and with France. To the east, the Holy Roman Empire is crumbling under the weight of its ambitions. The papacy, that old unshakable fortress in Rome, is no longer the undisputed ruler of Christendom. Something new is in the air. Doubt, a thirst for secular power, a hunger for gold. And above all, a yearning for control. And in France, the kingdom of lilies, a young man is rising. He has neither the fire of a warrior nor the charisma of a prophet. But he has eyes like steel and a will like marble. They say he is handsome. They say he is silent. History will call him Philip the Fair. He ascends in the year 1285, young, silent, and ruthless. They call him Philip IV, King of France. But the people do not remember him by a number. They remember him by a nickname, the Fair. Philip is tall, slender, with a face as if carved from marble. His beauty is icy. It does not invite, but commands. His gaze does not caress, but pierces. And if his appearance earns epithets, then his heart inspires fear. Enemies and even friends call him the Iron King. And one bishop describes him like this: he is neither man nor beast. He is a statue. Philip does not like nobles. He does not trust them. Their privileges are like thorns in his crown. He presses them with wars, taxes, and laws. He disfigures the old feudal France and builds a new one, centralized, subordinate, state. It no longer belongs to the families, it belongs to the crown. Instead of dukes, Philip surrounds himself with men of the law, servants, clerks, cold and loyal like himself. His most loyal are Guillaume de Nogaret and Enguerrand de Marigny, men with sharp tongues and even sharper ambition. Thanks to them, Philip transforms France into a mechanism of absolute power. On the international stage, the king dreams of more. Philip's relatives ascend the Hungarian throne. Others fight for the throne of the Holy Roman Empire. Europe feels the French shadow stretching outward, and not everyone is happy. In England, King Edward I defends his duchy in southwestern France. In Flanders, the people rise up against royal authority and defeat Philip's army in the golden horror of the Battle of the Spurs. But in the end, the French king regains his territories, money, and prestige, and inside the country, tensions boil. The Jews and the Templars, strong, independent, rich, are like a state within a state. And Philip does not tolerate rivalry well. In the year 1306, he expels the Jews from France. The following year, he turns his anger on the Knights of Christ. But let's go back to the beginning of his path to the throne. The year is 1268. A boy with a crown in his blood is born in the castle of Fontainebleau, Philippe, son of Philippe the Bold and Isabella of Aragon, a descendant of Louis the Saint, born to rule. But his childhood is not gentle. At 2 years old, he loses his grandfather. At 3, his mother. Rumors, deaths, his father's remarriage follow. And when Philippe is only 8, his older brother Louis dies under strange circumstances. The child becomes heir to the throne, and silence settles in his eyes. He studies with the cleric Guillaume d'Erquy, a man of his word, not of the sword. Thus, Philippe becomes not just a nobleman, but a thinking ruler. He participates in a failed crusade, but manages to withdraw the army with diplomacy. The Catalans remember him as cool, calm, and dangerous. On August 16th in the year 1284, he married Queen Joan of Navarre, a marriage of reason, but also of love. With him, France received the rich lands of Champagne and Brie, and Philip, an ally that he never replaced. After her death, he remained a widower until the end. On the 6th day of January, in the year 1286, the cathedral in Reims was silent. It was silent until the archbishop uttered his last words, and the people waited, not with rapture, but with tension, because a young man was ascending the throne, 17 years old, handsome as a statue, cold as stone. His name was Philip. That same year he became King of France, and by right of his wife, also King of Navarre, under the name Philip I. But everyone will remember him by only one name, the Fair. Philip was not like his predecessors. He did not seek approval. He did not speak to the crowd. He did not kiss children. He stands aside, tall, silent, untouchable. Bishop Ceset calls him a useless owl, and his servants worship him as God's chosen one. The truth, as always, lies somewhere between the both of them. To rule, the king does not rely on nobles, but on lawyers, bureaucrats, clerks, men with ink in their veins instead of blood. His closest associates are William de Nogaret and Enguerrand de Marigny, the sharp pens behind his every order. With them, Philip builds not just a court, but a machine. He creates a royal council, the Paris Parlement, and the Chamber of Auditors. France, until now a feudal kingdom of fiefs, begins to transform into a state, real, centralized, terribly efficient. In the early years of his reign, Philip faced an inconvenient vassal, the King of England. Edward I, as Duke of Aquitaine, owed vassal allegiance to the French crown. But after the fall of Dar Acre and naval clashes between French and English ships, tensions escalated into war. Attempts at peace, diplomatic games, even an arranged marriage between Philip's sister and Edward's son, all failed. Philip confiscated Gascony. Edward refused to appear in Paris, and war was inevitable. Flanders also rose up. The French army was defeated at the Battle of the Golden Spurs in the summer of 1302. The nobility was mowed down, but Philip fought back. 2 years later, he won at Montempevel and imposed a tough peace. The wealthy cities of Lille, Douai, and Béthune became royal. The daughters of the Countess of Artois married his sons, so with that political marriage and a sword, the king increased both his territory and his influence. When he ascended the throne, Philip the Fair inherited not only a crown, but also debts, huge sums spent on wars, especially against Aragon. At first, he managed to make a profit, but not for long. New wars with England and Flanders drained the treasury. The income was not enough, and then a long, dark tango with creditors, fraud, and coins began. The king arrested the Lombards, Italian bankers who gave him loans. Then he chased away the Jews and confiscated their property. Then he devalued the coins, minted money with less silver, and then, when it was profitable, declared them invalid. This brought gold, but destroyed confidence. The Parisians revolted. The church was furious, and the aristocracy was ruined. But Philip is ruthless. He creates rules when he needs them, and reverses them when they are inconvenient. For him, the state is not a coffin of traditions. It is a treasure chest. The church is rich, richer than France itself. The monasteries own lands, diamonds, taxes, rents, and in a time of war, famine, and a depleted treasury, even a pious monarch begins to see a threat in the blessing. So, in the year 1296, Philip the Fair decides to put the clergy under royal tax, half of the church's income, for the royal treasury, for the army, for the state, for France. Pope Boniface VIII does not wait long. With the bull Clericis Laicos, he forbids the clergy to give both money and obedience to secular power. Only Rome has the right to decide. But Philip is not a man to bend. He closes the borders. He prohibits the export of gold and silver from the country. He isolates the Pope economically, a spiritual antivirus against a real crisis. Two men with crowns, one in the shadow of God, the other in the light of the throne. Not a step back. In 1301, the conflict flared up again. The king arrested the Bishop of Pamiers, accused of treason. This was an unprecedented act, a cleric torn from church protection by the king's will. Pope Boniface was furious. He demanded his release. He convened a council in Rome. He was preparing to anathematize the monarch himself. But Philip would not stand alone. He convened a council of estates, composed of the aristocracy, clergy, and citizens of France. For the first time in history, the Estates General were born, and everyone, from the high bishops to the wealthy merchants, united behind the king, behind France, behind the crown. In response, The Pope took up his pen and wrote the most audacious bull of his time, Unam Sanctum. In it he proclaimed that the authority of the Pope was above all others, above emperors, kings, and peoples. One truth, one church, one shepherd, and then darkness fell. On September 8, 1303, Guillaume de Nogaret, Philip's trusted lawyer, together with the Pope's enemies from the Colonna family, invaded Boniface's hometown of Anagni. There, within the walls of his home, the Vicar of God was captured, humiliated, and detained. Legend has it that he was struck in the face. There were no witnesses. There was only silence, shame, and death. The Pope was released, but died a month later, broken and disempowered. Philip was victorious, and the papacy bowed. The new Pope, Clement V, was a Frenchman, obedient, grateful. In 1309, he moved the seat of the papacy from Rome to Avignon. From that moment on, the cross would speak with a French accent. And for 67 years, the French kings would keep God under lock and key. France was hungry for money. Wars with its neighbors were expensive. The papal clash, devastating. The currency reforms, catastrophic. And the people grumble. More and more voices whisper that the crown weighs, but is empty. And in this disturbing silence, Philip the Fair begins to look with new, predatory eyes at those who hold the treasures of Europe. Those who have no king, but have castles. Those who once fought in the Holy Land, and now amass wealth in the heart of France. The Templars. The order of the poor Knights of Christ and the Temple of Solomon, created in Jerusalem, purified by the blood of the Crusaders, bathed in legends, honored, pious, but also dangerously rich. They are not just monks with swords, they are bankers, lawyers, diplomats. In France, they have over 60 command centers, castles, farms, monasteries. They own lands, gold, ports, and the most terrible, the trust of all of Europe. Kings entrust their treasures to them, including Philip himself. But the order is not subordinate to the king. They answer only to the Pope. They have no vassal duties. They pay no taxes. And they are not few. Thousands of knights, officials, priests, and administrators. People dressed in white, with stars in their eyes and silver in their pockets. A closed system. A state within a state. Philip is their debtor. And the debt humiliates him. He cannot subdue them with the sword. They no longer fight. He cannot expel them. Rome protects them, but he can accuse them. And so, on the morning of Friday, the 13th of October, in the year 1307, the blackest twilight descends over France. By order of the king, arrests begin simultaneously throughout the kingdom. Over 150 people, knights, senior administrators of the order, commanders of castles, and even clergymen, are captured. The main accused is the Grand Master of the order himself, Jacques de Molay. The accusations: heresy, spitting on the cross, idolatry, secret rites with mystical idols and sinister rituals, perversions committed on the night of initiation. Legends tell of cats, of skulls, of cursed oaths spoken in the dark. But behind all this, there is only one thing: money, power, and a king ready for anything. The tortures are cruel. The inquisitors do not ask. They extort. The knights confess everything that needs to be heard. Some deny, others break. The order is ruined. In 1312, Pope Clement V, under pressure from Philip, officially dissolves the Order of the Temple. And on one March night in 1314, after 7 years of imprisonment, Jacques de Molay is taken to the island of Ile de la Cité in Paris and burned alive at the stake. But he does not remain silent. Staring skyward, enveloped in flames, de Molay summons his tormentors to the judgment seat of God, by name, the King, the Pope. And within a year both die, one from disease, the other from fear. The people whisper that the Templar curse is alive, and it will haunt the descendants of the Capetians until the very end. The greatness of Philip the Fair seems unshakable. The orders are dissolved. The Pope is subdued. The state is centralized. The coinage is controlled. But every empire, they say, falls not from without, but from within. And the blow comes from a place where no one expects it, from the very heart of the royal family. Philip has 3 sons, Louis, Philip, and Charles. Each of them will become king, and each of them has a wife, 3 young, noble, and suspiciously cheerful ladies. They see each other often, laugh too loudly, disappear for long hours, and on the streets of Paris, rumors of knights with red feathers and secret meetings in an old tower above the Seine, the Tour de Nesle. The rumors reach the ears of the Queen of England, Isabella herself, Philip's daughter. She visits her father, observes the daughters-in-law, and returns to London with a heavy heart. She sends her brothers richly embroidered purses, identical to the ones she saw in the tower, purses worn by royal wives given as gifts to their lovers. Suspicion grows into an investigation. In the Tour de Nesle tower, 2 knights are captured, brothers, members of the closest guard. They confess everything, meetings, caresses, even details about the scars on the princesses' bodies. The scandal is unheard of. The royal wives are arrested. One, imprisoned in a dark tower for the rest of her life. The other, abandoned. The third, spared only due to lack of evidence. The scandal eats away at the dynasty. Trust between the brothers disappears. Society begins to whisper that the royal blood has been defiled. And heaven, it is silent. But not for long. The year is 1314. Autumn fog hangs over the land, and King Philip the Fair rides proudly in the forests near Fontainebleau. But suddenly, the horse is frightened. In one sharp movement, the king falls from the saddle. The blow seems not fatal, but something is wrong. His body succumbs to a strange weakness. Philip cannot get up. For days he lies in his chambers, motionless, silent, with his eyes closed. The doctors are busy, the priests pray. But the Iron King, the one who defeats orders, humiliates popes, and reshapes the state at his will, is already melting. On November 29th in Fontainebleau, his last breath leaves him. Without a word, without a fight, without glory. And then the people remember. Only a year earlier, Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Templars, was burned at the stake, and in his last moments he cursed, Pope Clement, King Philip, you will stand before the judgment seat of God. Within a year, Clement died, then Philip, curse or not. For the people, this is no coincidence. And so ends the story of Philip the Fair, the Iron King. He centralized France, subdued the church, broke the orders, expelled foreigners, and turned power into a machine. But in this machine, he forgot the man. He left behind the throne, strong but lonely. His heirs could not stand it. One by one, they fell. And then across the channel, a young name raised its voice. Edward III, grandson of the king, through his daughter Isabella. The French throne is mine by right, he declared. France refused, and from this refusal, a war was born, which would be fought for 116 years. Nations would perish, cities would burn, and for a whole century, Europe will tremble from the echo of an Iron King. And whether we will tell how this war of dynasties and ambitions turns into a flame that changes the whole world, that also depends on you. If this story was interesting to you, support the channel with a like and a subscription. This way you show me that it is worth opening the next chapter of this turbulent story. When the time comes, light the torch of knowledge and walk with me, through centuries, through shadows, toward the next great story.